I was struck. She was my fantasy, my dream girl. But how often do fantasies manage to make the transition to reality and survive? Not many. Most fairy tales didn't start the way they read. Now, the evil stepmother in Cinderella, for instance. In the original version, she was forced to dance in red-hot shoes until she died. Most were tales designed to scare the hell out of kids and keep them safe at home. It got a lot more complicated when I got home. I sighed when I saw the car in my driveway. Mom and I didn't exactly get along that great, mostly because she was pushing me to settle down with a nice girl and get on with producing the next generation. I wonder what she would think of JYN? As usual, I came in the back door. I was surprised to hear peals of laughter. I heard JYN talking, so that's how she came to have a lobster grab onto her jug. They stopped when I entered, but were grinning like mad. I see you've met Mom. Mom spoke up. Yes, it's a shame I had to come to her, even though I didn't know there was a her to come to. Were you ever going to introduce us? That's when it got surreal. Mom, don't be mean to him just because he's a little slow, Mom snorted. Honey, if it was left to him, I'd hear about you sometime between the second and third child. I'm really glad you're in his life. You're going to have your hands full keeping him straight, but I think he's worth the effort. Besides, if it gets tough, you have reinforcements you can call in. I'm sure you haven't met his grandmother yet, have you? JYN shot her eyes to me. She never understood why I didn't talk about my family much. Maybe now she would understand. No, but I can't wait. Can you come for lunch Sunday? Maybe we'll get Jamie to grill, or better yet, do a fish fry. Try not to get here before 1, though, so we'll have time to get home from church. If Mom's smile got any bigger, her jaw would split. We'll be here. I might bring my sister and a few of his cousins. That way, you can meet most of them at one time. Call and let me know how many so I can make sure we have plenty. We had a light supper, neither very hungry. We cleaned up, put the dishes in the dishwasher, and snuggled on the couch. After a little snuggling, the kissing began. This went on for about 10 minutes before I gently pushed her back. Her face told me her feelings were hurt a little, so I leaned in and kissed her again. I want to talk, baby. You snuggling up to me does not help my brain function due to lack of blood. Jen looked a little apprehensive. What do you want to talk about? Us. If she looked apprehensive before, now she looked downright nervous. What about us? She asked. That came out wrong. I want to talk about us, but first, I want to talk business. I've decided to trust your business instincts, honey. I signed the loan papers today and gave my boss a month's notice. In 30 days, I'll be the co-owner of J&J Custom Furniture Design. Signs of relief washed over her face. That's great news. I was worried you wouldn't. By the way, what does the name mean? It's short for Jen and Jamie. This will be your business as much as mine. I'm sure you'll be the hand at the helm. You know how to network and negotiate. I know how to build furniture. Seems pretty equitable to me, that is if you'll do it. Of course I will, honey, but it will be your business. No, it won't. I had the agreement changed. You and I will own it 50-50ths. I declared your knowledge an equal investment. Don't fight me on this, or the deal is off. Are we good? Instead of talking, she dove back into my arms. Between the kisses and the tears, I was fairly certain there was a yes in there somewhere. Good. Your lawyer has the amended papers. Sign them anytime it suits you. Tomorrow morning, I'll be waiting outside his office, pen in hand. Good. Now, on to personal business. You know I was infatuated with you from the day we met. I didn't know you or that you were famous and rich in your own right. All I knew was the most beautiful woman in the world was standing before me. As our friendship grew, I discovered you were even more beautiful on the inside. You were my dream woman, even if you never had a dime. She was on the edge of the couch, looking too scared to breathe. You also know of my moral compass, so I just loved you from afar while Steve was alive. Steve's gone now, and now my dream woman is here, up close, and single. I'm glad. Now, with what I'm about to say, that we haven't slept together yet. No, that's not right. We have slept together, we just haven't, consummated our relationship. This way, I can look into the eyes of our daughters and sons and tell them to be really sure because we were never having sex until we were engaged. Maybe that will be a strong moral. That was all I got out before she tackled me so hard the sofa flipped over. She rolled with it until she was on top of me, eyes moist, chest heaving, hands trembling. Say it, say it, say it. I wanted to be on my knees, but I guess this will work. Jennifer Mary Ann Foster, will you marry me? Death, you didn't let me finish. Oh, you're finished, all right. I didn't really mean to propose before I had the ring. We'll go pick it out this weekend. No, we won't. You will pick it out. I want something nice, but it has to fit into your salary range. I've had rocks before, and this time I don't want a rock. I want a symbol of love. Understand? It doesn't matter what it is. I'll wear it with pride. You hear me? I guess I may as well start now. Yes, dear, she rained kisses all over my face, good boy. You're going to be so easy to train. I managed to get her off me and the sofa upright. Pat a seat. Maybe not. I need you to listen to me. There will be no discussion on this. JYN's eyes widened, but she held my hand and was still smiling. First, I know you're rich. Money I'll never be able to make in my lifetime. The thing is, I don't care. You're going to want things when we start a family, and I have no problem with you spending money to get them. The thing is, I want our children. Hold on a minute, that sounded so good I want to say it again. I want our children to grow up to be level-headed, not spoiled princes and princesses. I want them to have a work ethic, to know the value of saving and spending wisely. I also want a prenup. Your lawyer drew it up for me. Plainly speaking, I never wanted any of your money. So, if we don't end up together, he wrote it up like that. If we split, you keep what was yours, I keep what was mine, and everything we accrued together gets split 50/50ths. I'm not going into this to fail, and I'm pretty sure you aren't either. So, all they will ever be is words on a paper we're not really sure we remember. Agreed? Can we, maybe, no, take it or leave it? I want you 100% sure. I wanted you, not your money, not your fame, just you. She had a hard time hiding the smirk, so she looked down and said, yes, dear. Good. I realize you'll want a nicer house when the children arrive, and I'm all right with that. I don't want anything like you and Steve had. I want a nice, roomy home to fill with children and love. Agreed? Yes, dear. I have a condition. For right now, while we get our business off the ground, we stay right here. There's not a thing wrong with this house, honey. Houses are just glorified boxes designed to hold love, so I'm fine with the one we have right now. That kind of threw me. She had lived in mansions with servants, but she wanted to stay in an 1,800 square feet modular. She saw my look. The place Steve and I had, the ones I had before we got together, weren't houses, they were monuments to success. You couldn't be spontaneous with servants around. One wrong picture and careers could be destroyed. I want something where I can get up in the middle of the night and go raid the freezer for ice cream stark naked and have no worries. Besides, the house I grew up in was smaller than this, and I loved it. You need to remember, honey, I wasn't born rich. I lived a pretty average life until I was 15 and got discovered. I've always hated that word. Well, all right then. I'll take a little time tomorrow and look for a symbol of our love. It may not be just a diamond, I always thought they were kind of bland. If you just don't like it, I'll try again. Give this some thought, I don't want to start looking for venues tomorrow. I want a nice, long engagement to give us enough time to make sure we really mesh. I may disappoint you in bed, I might snore, or have some kind of habit that irritates you to distraction. I guess I just want to debug our relationship before we say our vows. Does that make sense? She grinned. It does, and I agree. I'm sure I have habits that you find distracting. I'm sure we will try to change for each other, but if we can't, we'll learn to deal with it. Now, enough talking, let's get to the consummating part of our relationship. I'd like to say making love to a millionaire supermodel was unworldly, that I saw and felt things I'd never experienced before. You know what? It was not because she was rich, not because she had incredible beauty. I saw and felt those things because she was the woman that I loved. Her body was fantastic. I found she was a little ticklish in certain spots and extremely responsive in others. I kissed her whole body at some point during the night, and she nearly jumped off the bed when I hit the back of her knees. She was as smooth as a baby, and she told me as we came down from the first round, I better like it like that because she'd had a laser treatment years before to help her career. I rubbed the soft mound and grinned, liking the feeling. We did everything we could think of to each other and talked about a lot more. As we talked, our hands wandered, and in minutes, I was as stiff as I was the first time. Jen climaxed twice before I couldn't hold back any longer. We collapsed, and I went to sleep. She let me get 6 hours in before waking me for a morning round. When we fell back, she giggled, "Shower time, baby. We smell like old sex. I prefer the scent fresh, so let's get clean and see what we can do about it." I can't. I have to work. Not today. You would be 2 hours late as it is. Don't worry, I called your boss and told him you had something important to do and wouldn't be in today. You don't have to thank me now. Let's get you all spiffy clean, you have an errand to run. We played in the shower, but she wouldn't let it get serious. After I dressed, she gave me a dandy little kiss and pretty much shoved me out the door. I grinned as I drove away. I didn't need to shop for a ring, I had already had it custom made by a friend. It was a nice-sized diamond in the shape of a heart, with 2 small emeralds also in the shape of a heart flanking it. The bands that held them to the mount were cleverly designed to look like skeleton keys, and the inside had an inscription, "You'll always have the key to my heart." It was corny, but she knew I meant it. And when she saw the ring and read the inscription, she cried hard for 2 hours, stopping just long enough to give me kisses from time to time. We lived in a world of lust and love until Saturday. We picked the last flowers of the season, getting just enough for 10 bouquets. I wondered how Jen was going to tell Janice. It was really subtle. As soon as she saw her, she shoved the ring under her nose. Jan let out a squeal, and soon she and the 3 nurses who always seemed to be around her grabbed Jen in a really nice group hug. When they realized they were ignoring me, they abandoned Jen and smothered me with hugs and kisses. When it came time to give the bouquets away, I gave Janice and each of her nurses one as a thank you. We distributed the rest, 3 to children and 3 to seniors, before ending the day in the rockers holding babies. Janice brought the tears out again when she told Jen I was going to make an excellent father. The first thing Jen did when we got home was drag me to the bedroom. Luckily, it was a quick 90-minute romp for us. She shoved me towards the bathroom. Shower, shave, and put on something nice. The girls will be here any minute. Melody brought her husband just so I'd have someone to talk to. Sandy showed up with Janice, and after quick kisses, we were evicted from the living room. I took it out to the shop, grabbed a couple of beers out of the refrigerator, and turned on a college football game. We were about 5 beers in when they found us sitting in rockers and singing the fight song of Ed's team. Melody led him to their car, glad she had less than 2 glasses of wine, and soon they were all gone. Jen started kissing me again before their taillights were out of sight. We didn't play because she wanted to go to church in the morning. She made sure we sat with friends and waved her left hand around a lot. Soon, a ripple went through the congregation, and the preacher, sharp as always, noticed. As he shook hands, he smiled, and when he got to us, he wrapped Jen up in a big hug. "You got him, did you?" she laughed. "He shouldn't have taught me to fish." I took the lessons to heart. I used the right bait, letting him run with the hook before reeling him in. I think he was happy when I scooped him up in the net. After talking about how seriously offended he'd be if we didn't let him perform our service, he turned us loose. It took us an hour to get from the front steps to the car because people were stopping to congratulate us. And by us, I meant Jen. Seems I was just along for the ride. A few husbands clapped me on the back and told me to get used to it. This was my life from now on. Mom, Gran, all my aunts and cousins descended on us that afternoon. We didn't cook, JY just ordered pizzas. I lasted about an hour before I slipped out to the building and worked on a couple of rockers. Mom came in an hour later, went to the fridge, grabbed a beer, then sat down in a completed rocker. I was a little leery of her at first. She was rich, beautiful, could have any man she wanted, live anywhere in the world she chose. I think she's the real deal, honey. The woman loves you. I wouldn't be surprised if you start your family right away. She really wants children, more specifically, your children. I'm going to have the prettiest grandbabies in the world, and that's not an exaggeration. Well done, Jamie. Well done. She got up after she finished her beer, turning as she reached the door. 2 things, you treat that woman like gold, you hear me? And I better damn well have one of these rockers by the time the first grandchild comes. All I could do was grin. She decided she wanted a June wedding that was 9 months away and suited me fine. I worked my notice and spent the evening setting up the shop. Jen thought I should push rocking chairs as our signature piece. We made an assembly line, although every rocker was just a bit different, and we did custom orders. Jen insisted we take ads out in magazines geared to the upscale home market. Of course, Jen was the model. The ad campaign was brilliant. In the front of the magazine, she was sitting in a chair as she was now, holding a baby. Midway through, there was another ad, her in late middle age, holding another baby, while a young woman looked lovingly at them. Almost at the back, there was another ad. Her makeup artist was a genius, and I got an idea of what Jen would look like in her 70s, still hot, slender, with pure white hair. She was holding another baby while a middle-aged woman and a younger one stood behind her. There was a banner over them, for generations, and a tagline up front, J&J Rockers, built for more than one lifetime, guaranteed. I was struggling over what to charge. I used local oak, the best I could find, and with labor, I had about $700 in each on average. If a customer wanted something custom, the price went up. I was thinking $2,000 and not feeling good about it when Jen called me to the computer. She had listed our prices, and a standard rocker went for $5,000, more if it was customized. That's highway robbery. No one will pay that, I protested. She grinned and changed pages. 19 orders so far, and the site has only been up for a day. I wouldn't worry too much if I were you. I could make about 2 a week using an assembly line process, 3 if I worked 50 hours. I refused to hurry, people were paying for the best, and I intended to give it to them. We were getting ready to ship our 10th chair when we got a phone call from the owner. She wanted it autographed. Jen said sure and then turned bright red when the customer wanted me to sign it, not her. Each chair had a unique feature, a number was carved into it in such a way that it wasn't noticeable. We didn't advertise that feature, and years later, I was called as a witness in a lawsuit. The complainant was saying the chair wasn't mine as it was advertised. I examined the chair and agreed. There was an uproar, and the judge asked how I knew. I asked to speak to the judge in private, showed him a few photos of my work with the numbers featured. There was no number on the chair in question. The seller, in turn, sued the shop she got it from, showing the letter of providence they had provided. Jen had moved her only relative, her Aunt Beth, the sister of the aunt that raised her, into her condo. I don't think we liked each other that well to start, but we must have grown on each other because soon she was helping in the shop, mostly computer and paperwork. Jen ran our finances and made sure she drew a good check every week. Jen had gotten more into the building end of the business. I still didn't like her near the saws, lathes, drills, and other assorted power tools found in our business, so she concentrated more on assembly and finish. It took me a long time to get used to seeing her in jeans and a t-shirt, bandana holding her hair back, with a shop apron and elbow-length gloves completing the outfit. We were up to for a week by then. One of her mega-rich friends dropped by. Jen, the consummate businesswoman, met him in nice clothes and gave him a tour of the shop. She led him into the house, showing him the custom-made four-poster bed and the matching chests and bedside tables I built for her. Next, she showed him the second bedroom set up for a girl. He came back into the shop, and after a round of coffee and pick-and-pound cake, made his pitch. JYN knows I am divorced. What she doesn't know is that I got custody of our daughter in the divorce. Seems her mother had a lot of bad habits that made it impossible to leave our daughter with her. She's 7 years old, and her favorite thing in the whole world is sitting in the custom rocker I ordered, number 29 by the way, and letting me rock her to sleep while I read her one of her favorite stories. That rocker has bonded us closer and brought us more peace than the tens of thousands I spent on therapy. She's already told me she wants her own rocker for her 8th birthday, and I want to surprise her with a whole new bedroom suite. Can you do it? I'll make up any shortfall you have. Concentrating on it, and you would have 7 months. Talk it over with your wife and get back to me. Oh, and you're not just a furniture maker, you're an artist in wood. You're not a father yet, but JY says it will be soon. You'll find, Jamie, that once you have a child, especially a little girl, your world changes. He left, taking the uneaten portion of the cake. He kind of insisted, so we let him. Jen and I made a quiet dinner and snuggled down on the couch. What do you think? I asked her. Jack told me that even though he's worth almost $1 billion, his most prized possession is your rocker. Will you do it? Tell Aunt Beth to inform everyone who orders a chair that there is a 6-month backlog. It should take me for months of concentrated effort, but we can get it done. Call him back and tell him we agree to do this. Tell him we may need to consult from time to time. We need to know more about his daughter. What does she really like? What doesn't she like? I don't intend to make something she'll grow out of in 3 or 4 years, but I would like to incorporate some subtle things to give her joy. She kissed me hard and grinned. Good. Consider it practice for our kids. We already have one for the first girl, but you need to think about boys down the line. I knew she wanted kids, but we never discussed a number. How many children should we have? I asked. She blushed and looked down. As many as I can bear safely, but considering my age, 3 or 4 if we space them closely. She glowed at my reply. Good answer. We need to get on that as soon as we tie the knot. I figure our first should come along 9 months and 1 day after the wedding. Jen surprised me by having Jack bring his daughter to the shop. I had her rocker ready to assemble, and I needed to make sure it was to her liking. I'd made it almost full size to give her room to grow with it. She was a bright and inquisitive child who followed Beth and Jen around as they explained things to her. Jack took advantage of the time to review my plans. Her favorite bedtime story was about a princess who becomes friends with a dragon and all the adventures they had. So, on the back of the header panel and amongst the flowers and vines, was a princess on the back of her favorite dragon. I went through about 8 headers before I got it right, but it was worth every minute to see her smile. Jen was instrumental in the design of her bed, a 4-poster with a canopy. Her vanity featured the heart-shaped mirror, the frame, the body of a dragon, curled around it. It was finally done, and we went to deliver and set it up. We arrived just after Allison went to school and just barely got done before she got home. Jack filmed her reaction. First, she just stood in the middle of the room, twirling slowly. Then she let out a shriek of pure joy and dove on the bed, laughing and crying at the same time. It wasn't until the next day she found our gift. I'd carved a dragon out of black walnut, sanding it to a velvety texture and coating it with oil, making it so dark it seemed to glow. The princess that stood beside it, with a hand on its shoulder, was out of holly, a wood that finished almost snow white. The contrast was very striking. We went back to the backlog of rockers, by now almost a year behind. 6 months later, a magazine was couriered to us, Architectural Digest. The cover was Allison's bedroom, and the article was about Jack's mansion. There was even a shot of Allison holding the dragon and princess. Jack went into detail about how the famous former model Jen Foster and her fiancé had designed and built every piece, making it one of a kind. He mentioned the purchase of one of our rockers and how it had led him to us. Our business phone lit up like the Christmas tree in New York. Everyone from the royalty of Europe to sheikhs of the Middle East and half the millionaires in America wanted a custom-designed bedroom. Just excellent, Jamie, Jen said. I'm pretty sure this will be passed on to daughter after daughter long after you and I are gone. I can't tell you how much I envy you. I was surprised. You're a self-made man. You have the personal numbers of leaders across the globe. If you sneeze, Wall Street jumps 50 points. Why would you envy me? All that I've done, all that I will ever do, it will be abstract, all coming down to numbers. I admit I'm a bit of a want when it comes to money, but fortunes are made and lost every day. Long after anyone remembers either of us, your rockers will still be here. And while everyone wants money, you can't rock your child in it. You can't snuggle the love of your life with $100 bills. More love will come across the seats of your creations than will ever be achieved by money, mine or anyone else's. Jen was right about you. JYN's pretty much right about everything. Why is she right about me? She said you were the most genuine man she'd ever met, a man who could stand by his convictions no matter what the cost and still sleep at night, a man who would always protect and put his family first. You're a unicorn, brother, you don't exist. For some reason, that conversation stuck with me for the rest of my life. Jack surprised the out of me by asking if JYN and I would take him and his daughter fishing the next weekend. We had them on the boat. JY was well past the cork and splash stage by then, but she had a ball teaching Allison. She beamed with pride when she hooked and landed her first fish. Jack was a pretty quick study and managed to catch a few himself. He ended up buying a medium-sized pontoon boat. He could fish off it, but more importantly, it would hold Allison and 6 of her friends. Jack spent almost every Saturday on the lake, often in the company of one of the mothers he seemed to favor, one a widow his age who had a daughter that Allison loved like a sister. She was nowhere near as rich as he, maybe being worth 20 to 25 million tops. Jin grinned and said, "We may end up having to do another bedroom soon." Then winter came, and fishing season was over unless you were a diehard. And much as I love fishing, I wasn't doing it in an insulated snowmobile suit and a full-face helmet. I had 2 friends who did that often, having to stop and break the ice off their lines. No thank you. Jen insisted we take a vacation in January, flying us to Vail for some skiing. We took Mom and Aunt Beth along, skiing while they shopped. The condo was really, really nice. Usually, I didn't bring it up, but curiosity got me and I asked how much it cost a night. "Nothing, we own it, honey." "Well, then," I said, stunned. Jen giggled at the look on my face. "It's an investment, baby. I have a management company rented out for us when we don't want it. It's actually returning a pretty good dividend. We donate all profits to several local volunteer fire departments. We even let firemen stay here free during the off-season. All tax deductible, of course." Jen had found an upscale country western club online one night, found us at the club. Jen had gotten Mom and Beth cowgirl outfits complete with hats. It's kind of hard on a guy when he realizes his mother is a bit of a fox. Didn't bother any of the guys who asked her for dances, some as young as 25, some in their 60s. But she could have been on the floor for every dance if she had wanted. Beth wasn't as pretty, but she was still a decent-looking woman, so she didn't lack for company. When we got home, we were all exhausted, and in the bright living room lights of the condo, Jen started laughing. When we left, she was positive Beth was wearing a bra, but now she was sporting the natural look. Mom smiled as Beth ran to her bedroom. "Don't be hard on her, this is the first time she's gone out in for years since her husband died. So what if she got a bit naughty? Good for her." Jen was unable to resist teasing. "Did you get a little naughty with her, Mom?" Mom smiled. "I didn't lose my bra, if that's what you're asking. Good night, kids." I sat there staring at Jen on the floor, my mouth hanging open. When March arrived, Jen had already begun planting our flower beds for the year while perusing the seed catalogs I usually ordered. She also gave me the directive to greatly expand my plot. After the vacation, Mom and Beth grew closer and joined a book club, which opened up even more social opportunities. This resulted in sporadic girls' nights out. Jen never made it a regular thing, but she did go to a couple and came home laughing at the group's antics. Jen gave me, the two of us, a really nice computer with CAD capabilities as one of our Christmas presents. It was really helpful in helping us design furniture. I didn't have the necessary level of computer literacy at first, but that quickly changed. Jen answered the knock on our shop door, assuming it might be a customer. To reduce distractions, we kept the doors locked. I watched her usher a young woman into what we jokingly referred to as an office cubicle. After 20 minutes of conversation, they stood and shook hands. The woman was brought to me by Jen, who said, "Honey, this is Molly Graham. She's the very first employee of J&J Custom Furniture." As a junior in college, Molly planned to major in interior design and minor in furniture design. We were her first choice when she was looking for a summer internship. She expressed surprise that nobody else at her school had mentioned us. She needed part-time work and was there on a scholarship, so we gave her 20 hours a week to see if she could work in our system. Not only did she fit in, but she made it better by adding concepts I had never even considered. We could get out nearly 2 rockers a week with her assistance. Our only disagreement came about because she wanted to automate a lot of the work. I shot it down right away. We wouldn't be different from our rivals if we mass-produced. Presently, each client is aware that their rocker is crafted by hand, with each spindle lovingly shaped to fit their lower body. With options for header and leg design, if they provided us with specs, each piece was genuinely unique. Though not in agreement, she comprehended. JYN suggested getting a custom seat. She once paid $6,000 for a bicycle that was missing a seat. For an additional $1,500, you had to order the seat to match your exact bottom measurements. I was astounded by the cost. I inquired, "Do you still have it?" "No, I got bored with it and gave it to some street kid who needed a bike." The point is, we could offer the same thing. So we did. We bought what amounted to sealed pouches of foam. All the customer had to do was shake it vigorously for 2 minutes to activate the gel. When it was fully inflated, they sat on it for 5 minutes, making a permanent impression of their bum. Then they sent it to us. We would scan the impression into our CAD system, and it would activate the machine that cut the general dimensions into the thick oak seat, and I would do the finish work. It was a very popular option. Of course, that particular option came at an extra $500, but very few opted not to do it. Zach soon joined us. Molly had a friend who needed an internship for school. Production increased once more after he demonstrated great skill at fitting the completed parts and made the same minor modifications I would have made. JY handled finishing, while I concentrated on carving. We were 3 weeks ahead of schedule by spring. It was fortunate that we had planned a 2-week honeymoon. I was clueless about our destination. Jen pleaded with me to keep it a secret. We were already married at that point. We shared a bed, did our work, and enjoyed games together. Though not nearly as much as previously, JY continued to spend time with her investors and do some volunteer work. Jan remained close to the girls, and the girls went to 2 different spas for girl weekends. I went hunting during that time. I carried a really nice camera and used it more often than the rifle because I enjoyed the solitude and realized that, as time went on, I didn't want to kill as much as I had in the past. I would continue to shoot, and during the season I would harvest 2 nice deer and a good-sized bear. I sent them to be processed at a professional butcher shop. Jen loved bear, especially bear sausage, but she was a little wary of deer. She insisted that I take her the following year. Everything was moving quickly. Jen was contacted on April 1st by some former business associates who wanted to use her as the face of their new perfume. The schedule would be light, with most commercials being filmed simultaneously and only reoccurring for seasonal pitches, and the pay would be very nice. Initially, she remained silent and had her lawyers confirm that it was kosher. Then she gave it some thought. They wanted a 3-year contract with bonuses built in if the brand took off, and the money was a little over $1 million annually. It came to a total of $5 million for about 5 ads annually. She then brought it to me and showed me every document. I read it and gave it some thought for several days. I could tell she was motivated to do it and that she secretly missed life. Do it if it makes you happy. I will admit that it makes me nervous. You'll be going back to the life of the rich and famous, the pampering, the bum kissing, the wild parties. If you choose to go, I'm afraid you'll wake up and realize life with me was just a fantasy, just a taste of how the other half lives. I trust you'll love enough to believe that it will never happen, I replied. She hugged me close and nuzzled my neck. This is my life. It's the life I want, the life I choose. Let me tell you why I'm doing it. Part of it is a favor for some of my mentors. Part of it is, it can be fun now, not the deadly serious game it was before. I'll go in, do about 2 weeks worth of shoots, and come back to my real life. Then maybe 4 days twice a year for the holiday and summer seasons. 3 weeks, honey, for $5 million. The best part is, all the money will go to the charity that outfits hazmat vehicles for fire departments. We could save lives, honey. She gave me a big kiss and giggled. Besides, I want to have your mom and Aunt Beth with me. You should come stay with me for a few days as well. I believe it will help you comprehend me better and see that there is no way this could endanger us. Over 3 years, it's just 7 or 9 weeks. I believe we can manage it, she sighed, adding, we stopped playing house and I want to finish the first one in 10 more weeks. I smiled. We haven't engaged in house play. I will regard us as married in June, just as I do now. We've debugged the system, honey, and it works flawlessly the way we did it. From here on, it can only be calm sailing. I ended up swallowing those words when Jen got her old agent back, saying she needed his insights. No issues there. In 2 weeks, she was flying to New York, where I would spend the first 3 days with her before having to return home to run our business. I would fly back for the weekend, then she would return the following week. Mom could not be with her the entire time, but would be with her as much as possible. Aunt Beth would be with her the entire time. The majority of the people she worked with were good people, but some of the other, more powerful ones were haughty asses. I listened for a long time before I lost it when I heard a director making fun of one of the bit players in the first commercial for no apparent reason. Listen, I believe that the first 5 times you said it, she understood. Why don't you do us all a favor and stop bugging the poor girl once she's filtered out all the profanity so we can enjoy some quiet time? The director had to regain his voice after the set fell silent for a while. Who the hell are you? It is irrelevant. Not on my set. I refer to the present moment. I'm banning you from every stage I'm on. You would be madder if you realized how much that annoyed me. I believe I like this place. Would it be okay if I sat down next to you and watched this genius at work? Never before have I been this close to a true god. The director glared at everyone who dared make eye contact before grabbing a chair intending to fling it into the set. People, I grabbed his hand and said, you need to stop and think about what you're doing. One of the sound men lost it and ran off the stage while his screams of laughter floated behind him. In your world, is this considered appropriate behavior? Take a look at those folks. Half of them, I'll wager, would kill you while you slept and smile. Now set the chair down and settle your ass into it, or else I'll be the one tossing chairs, but with you in it. How did you get in here, and who the hell are you? It is irrelevant. I'll make sure you fall a lot on the way out, and I'll pay top dollar for security. Attempt to re-enter, and I'll have the remainder of you taken into custody. Call security, please. I smiled and said, looks like we have a little time to kill. Everyone just stared at him, and nobody moved for a while. Eventually, one of his assistants scampered out of the room. I'm going to have fun making you miserable. I don't know where it would have gone if JYN hadn't entered the set at that precise moment. She smiled and said something to a couple of people she recognized from her previous work before coming over to me. She wrapped her arms around me and gave them a hard look with the kiss she planted on me before pretending to notice the director for the first time. "Hello, Bob. I've heard you were brought on for this shoot. Just so you know, I signed a contract that said that you were out of my life if I felt I couldn't work with anyone on the set. I'd better not find out about any temper tantrums or instances where you've treated people badly. Do we understand each other?" She smiled before he became still enough to say anything. "Oh, before I forget, this is my husband, and I love him very much. Whoever it was that he offended or disrespected me, they are no longer with me. Here, are we speaking clearly? Recognize? Or should I use more compact words? Alternatively, I could let him handle it. As a soldier, Bob, he was paid to kill people for a year. I just thought you should be aware of that." She kissed me again, saying, "I see you met Bob." Instead of answering, Bob stormed off the stage, screaming for someone. He's a real good director, but he's an a-hole. We don't get along, as the industry knows well, but we're both professionals. We'll be all right as long as he does his job and remains silent. The perfume smelled surprisingly good, seductive whisper, and I had a bad feeling about the whole thing. "You better like it," whispered Jen. "I'm getting an extra $200,000 to wear it exclusively for the length of the contract. It wouldn't hurt to see the spokeswoman spotted sporting Chanel right now, would it?" I watched as she filmed the first scene in an extremely attractive evening gown, walking through a room full of people who just stopped and stared, especially the men. When she got to the doorway, she looked back and winked at the camera, smirking, crooking her finger at the most attractive man in the room. He nearly ran to her, and the next shot showed him with his coat off, shirt open, hair tousled, as Jen ran her hand up his chest and whispered in his ear, looking as though he was going to pass out. It took 8 takes, 5 cameras, and an editor to piece it all together. The producer and owner of the product were very pleased with the final product. The owner snorted. "It's named the Seductive Whisper, not Screaming 304. It's much more powerful this way, hints instead of statements." Bob, of course, objected, saying she should be in lingerie. "I like it." Bob stomped out, furious, and Jen simply grinned. The producer said he'd have it polished for final approval by the next day and could hit television, cable, streaming, and even movie trailers by the next week. I was right. Molly had taken advantage and pushed out more chairs than was possible under our business model. I inspected them and found that 2 needed to be taken apart for rework, something terribly irritating after the glue had set. I would probably end up rejecting them instead of selling them. I would fix them up and donate them to a hospital somewhere. But I had to get back to the business. It wasn't that I didn't trust our interns. No, that's not quite true. I didn't trust Molly. I finally had to explain to her that when she owned a business, she could call the shots. Jen and I had agreed to let her work through the summer if she behaved. I fired Molly, who couldn't believe I was firing her, and she blew up at me, telling me it was time to leave the Stone Age and enter the real world. "You'll have a hard time replacing me," she said. "I'm very skilled at what I do." That should help to explain why I have to consume $10,000 worth of output. "I apologize sincerely, Molly. If you could just get yourself in control, you'd be an incredibly skilled artisan. It must be something you want, and you don't. You desire the simple and quick. What if the buyer receives a subpar item? Let's just settle down and move on with our lives, shall we?" She filed a complaint right away with the State Labor Board, alleging that I had harassed her sexually and that I had created a hostile work environment. I called the local office and told them that I would bring video evidence, including audio, of every minute she had spent in my building, and that I would insist on having every second watched. I also told them that I planned to sue Molly for making false accusations, damaging my professional reputation, and creating a hostile work environment for myself and the rest of my employees. My lawyer then served Molly with slander and libel, along with as many other charges as he thought would stick. We let her twist in the wind for 2 weeks before agreeing if she issued a public apology. It ate at her, but she did it. She called him 2 days later and offered to rescind the complaint if I would drop the charges. An alarm would trip in my house and at the local sheriff's office if someone tried to enter without the safety code. They caught 2, but not the third, which I figured would be easy to identify if he went to a hospital. He'd be the guy getting rock salt out of his bum. I had wired the shop because of attempted break-ins, trying to steal any finished furniture. During all of this, I was unable to get back to New York. Jen was scheduled to return in 2 days, but Beth called and said, "You need to get up here, something has happened, and Jen looks terrified to death. She won't let me out of her sight most of the time, and your mom is already on her way. If you value your job, you'll get out of the way," Mom yelled at the security guard as she met me at the gate. The guard acted as though he didn't want me inside. I dropped what I was doing and flew up. I went straight from the airport to the studios. Jen Foster, the advertisement star, is his wife. It appears that some people are worried about the welfare of my future daughter-in-law. You can either get out of the way or obstruct us so that the police can swarm the area. When we were almost out of sight, he moved aside, and Mom turned back to see him on the phone. "You need to put that phone away, boy," she said. "I promise you that once Jamie gets through with you, you'll wish you had been arrested if we find anything wrong and find you warned someone." "She's in the director's office with him and one of the associate producers," Mom informed me as we strolled. "Jen has been pale and unsteady for the past 2 days, and I feel like something horrible happened, but she won't talk to us about it." Beth and I were pushed out of the room when we arrived for the meeting, and she has been in there for 45 minutes. I went into his office suite with a full head of steam. I ignored the receptionist's attempts to stop me, and his chief assistant felt it was his personal responsibility to make sure I didn't make it through the door. When the police arrived an hour later, he was still unconscious. When the door exploded, I broke it just in time to see the fist connect with his jaw, and when he hit the floor, I got a couple of short ribs and nailed him in the crotch. He was on the floor, gagging, when I turned to the other man. "If you don't get out of those clothes right now, I'll make sure your husband sees the tape." Jack was standing there grinning. "If you don't, I'll take out his kneecap and give him a knee to the face as he falls." I also kicked him in the balls just because. Jen screamed and passed out, and when the police arrived, I was hugging and kissing her face. I was charged with trespassing, aggravated assault, 3 counts, 1 for each a-hole I put down, felony trespass, breaking and entering, and a bunch of other stuff I can't really recall. My bail was set at $1 million, which Jen promptly posted. I was lucky that Jen was wealthy. The truth was revealed during the trial's discovery phase. Jen had been given a date assault drug 2 days prior to the altercation at a cocktail party for the commercial's release. They nearly attacked her, stripping her down to her underwear, but Jen's sudden sobriety and nailing Bob in the balls caused him to scream loudly, attracting people to the door. They were able to get Jen into bed before opening it, explaining that she had overindulged and they were taking care of her. Beth had also been given a dosage of sleeping pills and was gone. A few of the women there were models with small roles in the commercial and gathered around JY despite Bob's threats. When I got to the scene, JY had gone to his office to confront him, but she had recovered enough to know that something had happened. It had gotten ugly to the point where JYN was screaming for help and holding the chair. How do we know all of this? I took Bob's phone before the police arrived. He was using it to film Jen fighting back, taunting her. There was footage of them in the bedroom, taking off her clothes, and talking about what they were going to do with her. There was also footage of 2 more women who had been drugged and abused. I gave the DA the footage, warning him that even if justice wasn't served, the footage would go viral. It was said that Bob fainted when the police pulled him in for questioning. They'd already gotten to the producer, and he'd rolled instantly, trying to save his bum. Bob tried to get JYN to drop the charges, offering her $1 million. She laughed. His lawyers will end up costing more than that. There was a lot of discussion over whether the footage was obtained legally. In the end, though, I had taken the phone and given it to them, claiming there was evidence about Jen on it. I think the money was well spent. It never went to trial. Bob saw the writing on the wall and cut a deal that would have required him to register as a sex offender, effectively ending his career, and serve 5 years at a Camp Cupcake with the possibility of parole in 13 months, all in exchange for a guilty plea on lesser charges. The 2 women he had molested earlier were suing him in civil court, and it was a good bet he'd be broke by the time he was released. The producer was not so fortunate, serving 7 months in a regular minimum security prison. I am not sure if he had a pleasant stay, but I do know he was busted for fighting and had to serve an additional 4 months. I did not plan or authorize it, but I heard he had a pretty interesting incarceration. He got beaten up a few times and found out what it was like to be the victim of a willing sexual encounter. It might have had a tennis court, but it was still a prison. The owner of the perfume and the executive producer were beside themselves with anger and regret for what Jen had to go through. They promised her the next shoot, unless she wanted out of the contract, would be in another location with a crew she had to approve before shooting started. After giving it some thought, Jen decided to finish the contract, and her next shoot was scheduled for Miami for the summer and Aspen for the winter one. The receptionist and assistant withdrew charges when they learned the DA was considering charging them with aiding and facilitating assault. My escape from jail was narrowly avoided. In court, my attorneys painted me as a man who would stop at nothing to protect his wife from sexual assault, which was a fairly easy portrayal given what actually transpired. I was placed on probation in the state of New York for a year, and they strongly advised that I take my vacations elsewhere. This was easily accommodated. They made an exception for the first probation visit but were able to transfer it to my home state for the remainder. I was all for delaying it until she was more settled, but Jen surprised me by how strongly she refused, saying, "Not no, but hell no." Jen recovered in time for the wedding. "Honey, I really need this. I want happy memories, not nightmares like I had for a while." Thus, on a sunny June afternoon, an average man married a millionaire supermodel in a small country church. The ceremony was lovely, despite the fact that we had to hire half the police force in our county and the surrounding areas to keep the hordes of reporters away. A few of the more shady ones were arrested, which they found hard to believe, and held in jail until the wedding was over. The rest took the hint and essentially behaved. When we left the church, 200 or more cameras clicked furiously, Jen's glowing face and her happiness so great that she blew kisses at them. The cops laughed at the idea that the reporters would not have another chance to get pictures because we entered the small helicopter. Since she was still wealthy and well-known, we initially anticipated a few reporters, but her attack and the ensuing legal action thrust her back into the spotlight. It got so bad that we had to fence our property and employ security guards for a while. It became a game. The guards would tell us where they were hiding, and I would grab the shark guns and clay targets. We would set the thrower so the targets would be well into the air but directly over their heads before we shot. Jen was really good at it, and she would die laughing when they would break cover and flee with pieces of clay raining down on them. Some tried to file charges, but the sheriff simply shrugged them off. "I'm not sure what I can do about it." "You're not supposed to be that stupid to be standing on a skeet range." We spent our vacation on a small private island in a warm climate. When I told her on the third day that it was time to start making babies, she laughed and rubbed her stomach. "This isn't fat, baby," she said. I turned to face the smooth back of the love of my life. Our 30th anniversary was approaching, and we planned to spend it on the same small island where we had spent our honeymoon. Now that we had the island, though, it was our property. The previous owner had mismanaged his finances, so when he had to sell it, Jen bought it without telling me. We had owned it for 10 years, and it was our family's favorite vacation spot. JJ, Jen Jr., had followed in my footsteps and became a furniture designer. The only thing that disappointed me was that she liked working with plastic and metals. However, she had won awards, so I guess it was okay. She did insist that I make her a rocker when she and her husband announced they were expecting a child. An 8-year-old daughter had grown to love Grandma Jen. Our son Eric took a different route and went on to become a lawyer. He married and divorced after 2 years. She went for the money only to find out he had none, save for his salary. He was a little wary of women for a while. Then one day, Jack appeared. He had kept in touch over the years and managed to make one weekend a summer to fish with us. His new wife was a little overwhelmed at first. After she caught a nice bass, it was off to the races. Allison had bonded to her really well. She was 11 when they married, a time when a mother's guidance was welcome. Bonnie had never had children but was as protective as a mother bear. I pitied the first boy who dared ask Allison out. She'd probably know everything about him going back for generations before he rang the doorbell. We were at her maternity shower, and she cried hard when we gave her the rocker Jack wanted to buy, but we insisted it be a gift. It was going to be a girl. Poor Jack didn't have a chance. Fast forward 26 years, Jack came by with his family for our annual fishing expedition. By then, our kids were grown, but they participated, both having learned to love the water. We had to have several boats, so we rented a couple of pontoons. The old people ended up together, and the younger ones paired off on the others. JJ, her husband, and 3 kids went with Allison and her second husband, and their 3 kids, collectively 1 from his past marriage. That left Eric and Jack's youngest daughter, Melanie. You could hear them arguing over the water a few times, and we looked at each other inside. Eric was divorced, and Mel had broken up with her longtime boyfriend 2 months before the wedding. He was pissed because he had to sign a prenup specifying he could never touch any inheritances she might receive and took it out by screwing her best friend. I don't think he meant to get caught, but he did, and she had him out of her apartment the next day. Whatever they argued about, they must have resolved it by the time we got back to the landing. Everyone went back to the house to clean fish and prepare for the big dinner we always had, except Eric and Mel. They wanted to go on a sunset cruise. We just smiled, and one thing led to another. They married 14 months later, and they just announced their first pregnancy. Jack came to me later in the evening, wanting me to help him build a rocker. I was more than happy to help. They didn't have a prenup, insisting it was not necessary. Jack told me he never felt more confident in his life when he tore up the papers he prepared. Jen made me retire at 50, though I still occasionally made a rocker or bedroom suite for old friends. I found myself thinking of her first husband every once in a while. Steve had everything he could ever want and was just too greedy, ambitious, driven, pick a word. He just couldn't be happy with what he had, and he had it all. I regret his death and feel a bit guilty about my happiness occasionally, but I get over it pretty quickly. Deep down, I'm sure they would have divorced if Jen had found out about the vasectomy. I regret thinking negative thoughts about him. He was always a friend to me, but his priority should have been his wife and her happiness. If he couldn't give it to her, he should have told her and let her go. I don't think he would have ever done that. He was too proud of the perfect wife on his arm at dinners and events. I don't think he ever realized his fantasy wasn't real, that JY, for all her beauty, was just a woman who needed love, respect, and attention from her mate. Seems pretty simple, doesn't it? Lenny, to be kind, was not a handsome man. His force of personality made him rise above the pretty people around him, so I could kind of understand the relationship, despite his average looks and quiet dress. Lenny was famous. He wrote his first novel at 29, his first bestseller at 33, and had a string of very successful novels at 50. 7 had been made into films. We didn't even know he knew how to spell. I did invite this childhood friend whom I had lost touch with over the years, and I was shocked when he showed up with a gorgeous woman on his arm. After that, he was an infrequent visitor, always stopping by on his way to somewhere. Looking at Jen's immaculate back reminded me of him. We were talking and sitting at a table as the reception was coming to an end. He had been laughing all night, and Jen finally asked him what was funny. "You guys." But not in a funny way. "You're the stuff of myths, proof that unicorns exist." Jen thought about that for a while, even looked up his old free stuff. That led to a few adventures in the bedroom and some pretty frank discussions, all good ones. One day, Melody and the girls came by, laughing as they piled into Jen's SUV for an afternoon out. That night, I noticed a bandage on her shoulder. She assured me it was just a minor procedure she had done, something so simple she didn't want me to bother. About 3 days later, she came out of the shower with some medicine in her hand. "Honey, will you rub this on my shoulder?" I froze when she turned her back, even though the man performing the procedure said it would help it heal faster. The procedure turned out to be a tattoo, something she told me she'd always wanted but didn't get while she was modeling. She said she worked with girls that had tattoos and how much longer they had to stay in the makeup chairs to cover them for a shoot, so she held off. The tattoo was of 2 unicorns, a male and a female, necks entwined while they nuzzled each other. The artist was the best she could find, and the colors were vibrant, the details painstaking. It was beautiful, and I told her so, promising to kiss it when it healed. More a year after JJ was born, the tattoo was modified, showing a little unicorn beside the couple. After Eric, another was added on the other side. The artist asked permission to show them in a magazine article about his work. It was the last time Jen modeled, looking over her shoulder with a smile, her bare back glowing while the tattoos looked like they were ready to trot off her shoulder. It became the cover photo for the issue. The artist was suddenly turning down work from all kinds of famous people because he was swamped. Some wanted the same tattoo, but he refused. Part of the agreement of her letting him show the tattoo was that he never did another, and he honored his word. I kissed the little unicorns and lingered over the big one. Jen squeezed and turned, pulling me into her. Sometimes, just sometimes, fairy tales come true. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.